Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to the December 7th Water Committee meeting. In the room today, we have Director Hamir, Director McCollum, Director Grieve, Director Cole-Hamilton, Director Hillian, Director Swift, and we have some guests who will be coming up in a little bit, and we have Director Arbor online. So I'd like to first acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, and as always, we really appreciate sharing this land with them that they've graciously taken care of for us and that we continue to partner with on many projects. So thanks to that. So the first thing on our agenda today is the management report. If someone would like to move receipt. We've got Hamir move and McCollum second. And are there any questions or comments about the management report? Seeing none, I'll assume everyone is in favor of receipt, and we'll move on to the only thing on our agenda today, which is we're very happy to have folks from the Village of Cumberland here. We have Mayor Baird, supported by Village of Cumberland staff. I believe we have Kevin Mefedrin here, as well as a couple of staff online. I'm sure that the mayor and Kevin will introduce as they go along. So without further ado, we will welcome them to do their presentation on Perseverance Creek. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Excellent. Thanks so much.
Opportunity to present on some important work we are undertaking in the Perseverance Creek watershed. Building off of decades of stewardship and protection of the Perseverance Creek Basin, but recognizing the benefits of collaboration in solving complex resource management issues. The village has embarked on a new chapter in watershed protection. We are calling this work the Perseverance Watershed Initiative, a project that we are inspired and encouraged by, and one that we see as vitally important to the continued protection of drinking water for our shared communities. Related to this work, we also are here to share more information on the number 2 Reservoir Dam project and remediation work in the adjacent north branch of Perseverance Creek. Cumberland Council is feeling optimistic about the future of these projects, and we hope you will too. If you have any questions after today's presentation, please reach out. I now invite Kevin Mefedrin, our Manager of Parks and Recreation, to present further information.
Thank you, Mayor Baird. Am I on here? Okay, let's switch. Put a quarter in there. Thank you, Director Grieve. As Mayor Baird mentioned, my name is Kevin Mefedrin, and I'm the Manager of Parks and Recreation with the village. And my role in these projects today is largely to do with the village being owners of 230 hectares of land in the Perseverance watershed in the Upper Basin. And then in addition to that, another few hundred hectares that we've acquired in partnership with the community forest in the lower reaches of the watershed. And that's how I came to be a member of the team in the Perseverance Watershed Initiative. That being said, the latter half of the presentation, I'll be delivering that content on behalf of our Manager of Operations, Rob Crisfield, who is unable to join us today. But our CAO, Clayton Postings, has also joined us virtually. Yeah, I think he'd be available should questions come up later on. So. Yeah, it's really a 2-part presentation today, very much interrelated content. We're going to start at a high level and speak to the Perseverance Watershed Initiative, which really is looking at, well, it's a watershed focus. It's a sub-basin, of course, of Comox Lake. And then we'll move on to the more specific, but like I say, closely linked number 2 dam project, which we're actively working on. So starting with what we're calling PWI, this project was born out of the need to look at watershed protection, not on a case by case, or as we say, kind of chasing flagging tape approach, but look at how we protect the basin as a whole and integrate land management planning amongst resource operators and community conservation groups, as well as the village, who has a role like in land management, in water purveyance, recreation management, etc. So the project was initiated first by the Cumberland Community Forest to, in the very early stages, engage the village about, well, like I say, doing things a little bit differently. And this was born out of their interest in strategic land acquisition, but also recognizing that there needs to be multi-parties engaged in conservation work at that scale. And they were really looking to turn to a watershed-centric approach. So the impetus was logging adjacent to one of our reservoirs, Allen Lake, in the village. At that time, did a significant amount of work on risk analysis to understand some of the risks of that proposed forestry block adjacent to our reservoir. And what we determined earlier on is rather than scrambling and trying to allocate resources to the block by block approach, it would be better to allocate our resources and zoom out and look at it on a watershed scale. And hence Perseverance Watershed Initiative was born, and working with Mosaic and them being engaged since the early days. And so just some background and context just to kind of introduce. If we look at this map, this is it's not your typical angle. Comox Lake is in the bottom of the screen, the village on the left. But this is the Perseverance watershed. It's about 2,200 hectares. Its headwaters are in the Beaufort Mountains at an elevation of about 1,000 meters. And its outlet obviously is in the east basin of Comox Lake. Of the 2,200 hectares, about 25% are owned by the village. Going back to the 1950s, we acquired 230 hectares adjacent to our drinking water supply reservoirs. And then, like I said earlier, more recently, acquisition of parkland. The remaining 75% of the watershed is largely held in the private managed forest land reserve, and is of that, most of it is managed by Mosaic. There also are some other partners. There's a small sliver of crown land, but it largely is privately held. And within the basin, we operate our waterworks system. And then, of course, the creek flows into Comox Lake, adjacent to the CVRD's property, and near your outlet for your water system. So ultimately, Perseverance Creek is source water for the 45,000 people in the CVRD service, as well as the 5,000 in the village of Cumberland and Royston service. So essentially, the initiative is about a conservation partner being the Cumberland Community Forest Society, the village, and Mosaic as the private managed forest land manager. And then we've also engaged with Comox First Nation on the initiative, and the details of that engagement are currently under discussion. And the initiative boils down to two objectives. So the first is developing a strategy for integrated watershed planning and management in support of the long-term sustainability and protection of the watershed. And the second piece is critical. It's setting ourselves up for success to leverage resources for implementing science-based strategies that support effective water service delivery and stewardship. So how do we go about doing that? We've worked on a terms of reference and built out a work plan that is structured around what I'm calling 4 main building blocks. And the first one is about acquiring the information and gathering the data through a science-based approach. So this is really understanding the hydrologic system that the watershed is and the ecological functions that support it. Wetlands, water courses, the natural assets. And this is something that the village has some good solid information on lands we own, but we haven't looked at it on a watershed scale. And so there's lots of gaps. And it's also something that we have lots of information on the infrastructure, the dams and the intake pipes and the treatment systems, et cetera, and of course distribution once you're in the village. But the missing piece is those natural assets. Building off of that, the second piece is around watershed-centric land use planning, and this is where Mosaic's been engaged and is at the table. And the idea is, identifying those critically sensitive areas that really do provide those natural assets in support of a resilient system. And then determining how best to protect those through the multiple different tools available. The third one is linking this back to the community and watershed awareness and stewardship, talking about what opportunities exist from an educational perspective and leveraging resources to really elevate the community's knowledge. The community in Cumberland is well versed in the landscape with the extensive trail network, but I don't think it's always well understood exactly just the various resources and the importance of drinking water protection. And then lastly, this is a critical one as well, is process alignment. There's a lot going on in terms of watershed protection initiatives. The CVRD is leading watershed protection plan for Comox Lake. Other things underway, a lot of specific work on projects, and this is about really ensuring that clarity and communications and that all those dots are linked. And what's fundamental to this is all the different stakeholders and the relationships at play between private managed forest landowners, the village conservation community, and other partners in recreation management and otherwise. So where are we at? We're kind of in between. We're working under both the scope and the plan columns right now. So a draft terms of reference has been developed between the three partners, and preliminary engagement has occurred with KFN. And as part of that, we're working to define those roles. So it's early stages, but concurrently to that, we're also in the second column there. We've begun the background literature reviews and starting to identify those knowledge gaps and fill in some of those blanks, starting to collect the data to really inform future land protection efforts. And then stage 2 of the project, as per the terms of reference we developed, we're hoping to get going into next year on, and that's really moving to implement some of these plans, collect more data and inform kind of next steps. And ultimately, the goal here is to be strategically linked to a few of the provincial government's ongoing initiatives that they've got underway. They've launched the watershed security strategy, the BC Healthy Watersheds initiative as part of their climate change program. There's the Clean BC roadmap, and we really see it critical to have some shovel-ready projects so our community can benefit from some of these provincial initiatives. And that complements village ongoing engagement in provincial policy reviews, and what the village really wants to be seen as is a leader in collaborative watershed protection programs. When I say village, it's not just the municipality, it's the leadership of the Cumberland Community Forest Society and others. So that's the quick synopsis of or maybe not so quick, I'm not sure how long I've been speaking, but of the Perseverance Watershed Initiative. And next, I want to turn to the more focused or detailed project, and that's the number 2 dam upgrades, and of course, some of the adjacent works in the North Branch of Perseverance Creek. So starting from kind of a high level and then zooming in a little bit in focus here into this project. So again, just starting with a little bit of context, and I'm not sure, does this have a pointer on it, Jake? Is it, oh, I just stopped it. That's not the pointer button. Oh. Would it be play or is it the back? Is that a button? You'd think a simple remote like this I could use. Okay, anyway, I think I can describe this. So essentially, the village water system is made up with two parallel systems that then join close to the community. So on the left side of your screen, kind of from bottom left up to the community, if you were to draw a line, you can actually see a geographic feature. It's a bit of a canyon. That's the Cumberland Creek side. And so that's made up of 4 reservoirs with an intake at the lowest at Henderson. And then that feeds a pipe into town. And it joins up with the second side of the system, which is Allen Lake on the right side of the screen. And that intake then joins with the other, and they flow down to our new water treatment plant. So on the left side, the third reservoir from the top historically was known as the 900-foot level reservoir. It's about 300 meters in elevation, is a very small reservoir, which we call number 2 dam. And this is the one that's the focus of the conversation today, but it's the third reservoir from the highest elevation, Stevens Lake, in the top, or sorry, the bottom left corner there. So sorry, hopefully that's kind of an adequate, just kind of contextual bit of information just to help frame the project. So number 2 dam, its history goes way back over 100 years. A water license was first issued back in 1897, and what I would guess would be a fairly rudimentary log crib dam was built at that point in time. So this would have been done by, I believe, a company affiliated with the colliery and the mining companies, the Cumberland and Union Waterworks. So this was the utility operator pre-village involvement. And at some point after 1940, there was some fills added to raise the dam. But following that, a few decades later, that dam failed. And that's the picture on the right of the screen in 1972. And so since that point in time, those repairs were completed, but there's been several engineering studies, and ultimately the recommendation is a reconstruction, a remediation program to address seismic concerns, amongst other issues. And so most recently, over the past approximately 10 years, the village has worked on a more focused project on what is this remediation project. What exactly are some of the criteria in which to work towards? And this is understanding some hydrotechnical conditions, the stability of the dam, spillway options, et cetera, as well as remediation options for the north branch of Perseverance. And in addition, another kind of side project, and that's potential energy recovery. And so that's all related. So this is a photo of an aerial of the dam. The bottom right is the main dam, and then in the top left there are more secondary spillway dams, saddle dams that have been constructed, including a coffer dam to help with the repairs in the 70s. And it's a unique situation in that ultimately it's kind of a rare hydrologic feature, geographic feature, in that naturally pre-dam construction, there were 2 outlets. And so what the project works are intended, what they currently propose to do is first reconstruct that main dam, including the spillway in the bottom right. The second would be construction of a small saddle dam on the south or the top left of the corner of the screen, which would serve to better control flow down the secondary outlet of the reservoir. The third one, and importantly for this audience, is remediation work in the north branch of the creek, which I'll speak to momentarily. And then lastly, it's about improving access to the dam. Right now, it's fine for service trucks, but it's down a pretty rough road, and there's some work to do on a creek crossing and some other works. So that's based on the engineered reports that have been developed in progressively more detail. That's the current proposed scope of work for the project. Now, specifically the north branch of Perseverance Creek. So this is interesting, and it is naturally a secondary outlet, likely formed by meltwater at the end of the last period of glaciation. But pre-dam, it likely experienced flow. So this is this is the south end or the bottom right of the reservoir, as you can see. So this north branch likely experienced flow when the main stem or the outlet from Cumberland Creek, which goes down the canyon in the green part of the image there, when it was blocked with ice or woody debris or perhaps beavers or other natural phenomena. So it is a natural spillway, but its functionality has kind of, yeah, you could say maybe ebbed or flowed over the years, depending on some very specific circumstances. And so since the dam was constructed, it has likely received more flow, particularly in the upper 500 meters of it. You can see there's a confluence with another creek about 700 meters from the outlet of the reservoir. And that's a naturally flowing creek that typically has water in it most of the year. And so the preferred approach that's currently been recommended by the village engineering consulting team is the remediation project for the entire dam would include some creek restoration works in the north branch, where there is the site of some sedimentation in the creek due to erosion of a clay bank. And so what's being proposed is more water would flow down Cumberland Creek, and it would be 1 in 10 year events, and anything more would flow down the north branch. And then in the north branch, the actual remediation works would involve some channelization work and the construction of an armored berm up against the toe of that eroding slope. And so the current project status, the most recent 2020 report, fall 2020 report, is overall project cost estimate of approximately $4.5 million. The village, even prior to that report, was submitting for grant applications to fund the project in 2019. That one was unsuccessful. And we are really hoping to hear back, having not had it yet, it should be any day now, on a second application that was submitted about 13 or 14 months ago. And so the hope is, the project will be funded and we can proceed. And then subject to funding, of course, there's multiple stakeholders involved in the project and getting a team up and running. But of course, the CBRD would be on that list in addition to DFO, Mosaic. I forgot to mention, the actual site of the erosion is on Mosaic property as well. So in terms of how this project is approached and making sure that any material and rock and supply can come from the immediate area, they're a fairly critical partner in seeing through to successful completion. So that is the presentation, and I'm not sure, Clayton or Mayor Baird, do you have anything further to add? Clayton, are you there? Is he hiding virtually? There he is. There's a smile. Hey, Clayton.
Good afternoon. Yeah, no, I don't, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll turn it back over to.
Yeah, thank you
Chair
so much for the presentation. We'd like to have a bit of time here for any discussion or questions, so I'll open it up to the committee. Director Hamir.
Thanks, Chair, and many thanks to Mayor Baird and staff for the presentation. You know, I have to say, Cumberland has always impressed me with the very forward thinking and progressive work that you've done. And I think your project on the Perseverance Watershed Initiative is you're already ahead of, I think, what we were even thinking at the regional district of working on a watershed level. So I want to just commend you on all of that work that you're doing, and congratulations on that. I'm hearing that, you know, you as a small community and the Cumberland Forest Society are doing all this work. I heard a little bit of reference to provincial support. But maybe could you, I don't know if you could elaborate, is this financial support that you are able to, or you think that might be available, or is there a funding stream that you can actually see that would support your watershed work?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Just to update you on, we've been attending the modernization of the forest policy by the provincial government. And we attended last spring and this fall. And what they're dealing mostly with is Crown land. They haven't been dealing with private managed forests. But at the last meeting I attended, they said that they are forming a special group to work with private managed forests, and that dialogue will start in January, because they hope to be finished their work by March of next year. So they're going to hold this special meeting to just talk about private managed forests, because one of the issues we have is that we have no authority in our watershed, and we want the government to give us this more authority, because they can plan and do all those things. And they've been great. They worked with our staff and made changes to their logging practices, but they still have the final say in whether they log or not. So that's something that we are definitely working on.
Right, thank you. You go right ahead.
Great. Oh, go ahead.
If I can just jump in further to the mayor.
Darn it.
Where's my quarter? There it was.
What is that?
Is we have had success with a small provincial grant, I think recognizing the innovative approach to this project. They have supported us with a small grant right now. And as I spoke to in the presentation, we really feel like there's an opportunity here with funding that's likely to come with I believe it's the Watershed Security Strategy is an initiative the province has embarked on, in addition to some of the other initiatives and projects that they have underway, recognizing the value of kind of community-based approaches to responding to some of these complex issues. Every watershed's so unique, and we feel fundamentally for ours, there will be opportunities if we can be prepared for I guess leveraging those resources for, is it land protection or remediation works or whatnot? How do we become more resilient as a community from a drinking water supply perspective?
Great, thank you. And Director Grieve, I'm not going to owe you anything.
Just a minute, I'll put my quarter in. Yeah, and there's a subtle distinction, I think, between private managed forest land and private land that the forest company owns. Because when you talk to our colleagues in the interior, they have no idea what we face here on the coast. They don't realize the incredible land grab that took place years ago, and now we're suffering all the consequences. I think things like riparian areas of only 30 meters, up to water courses. And if you actually fly over the Crookshank, you'll see that is barely observed in that watershed as well. My question though is, how much of the watershed is actually in the village? Because some of it's in Area C as well. I'm just wondering, it'd be helpful to have the Area C write your letter support.
Take any support that we can get. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Director Hamir?
Well, this is actually a question to our staff. This watershed security fund or new program, I'm wondering if our staff are aware of it. I'm thinking also not just of the watershed work that's happening around Comox Lake, but our own potential, looking at the Solon River watershed area. If our staff are aware of this potential possible funding source.
On the matter of the Solon, we are receiving some support from grant funders for that work to date. And Chris, any comment with respect to the Comox Lake watershed and consideration to this or other grant opportunities?
Which number is he? There we go.
Thanks, Russell, through the chair. So we've recently become aware of this specific funding opportunity, and we're exploring it to see if there's any overlap between our planned or anticipated activities. So that's really all I can say to that matter.
Okay, we'll go back to Director Hillian. So I'm having trouble figuring out the number of the mic. I think 12. Okay, thank you. Great, thank you. Go ahead, Director Hillian.
Thank you, Chair. I thought maybe you're just getting back at me for the Sewage Commission. I just want to thank you folks for presenting today, and I appreciate it on a number of levels. Mayor Baird, if I'm not mistaken, I think you're probably the longest serving current elected official in the Comox Valley. Would that be correct? And I'm just wondering, it strikes me that there's a perhaps an unprecedented level of collaboration between the governments of the Valley, and in particular the regional district and the other municipalities at this particular time. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about that, whether that's your observation as well.
It certainly is. I've seen a lot of change at the regional district and from the village. And we always want to support each other and help each other out, because you can't do it all alone by yourself anymore. And it's really amazing to see the difference. Yes, positive difference. But I would like to just comment on the water sustainability. We actually were the first municipality to make a presentation to that committee once they found out they were getting money. And so we really provided them with a lot of information, and they were going to reach out to other municipalities and regional districts for input also.
Thanks very much. And I should also thank you for lending Chair Kettler to us for the last couple of years.
Great, thank you. Are there any other comments before I say a couple things? Okay, well, I'd really like to thank you for coming. I know this was a bit of a tight discussion, but I think there's lots of opportunities for collaboration, and I think looking towards some advocacy at the provincial level might be an area that we embark on possibly. I'll leave it up to the committee to decide sort of response to the presentation. I think it would be great, as you mentioned, to have that more holistic approach around watersheds throughout the valley and how we can work together and how we can identify those really sensitive areas around our watershed, but also the other things like habitat and climate change and all of those things that we need to consider. So unless there's any further comments, I think we'll just vote on receipt, and we'll look at what we may think about discussing in the future on the topic. But thank you so much for coming today. So all in favor of receipt? Okay, and that's carried. And that is the only thing on our agenda today. So we have a motion to adjourn. Okay, Grant and Swift, thank you so much. We'll move on to the next meeting.